Hi everyone, my name is Lerato Matabola, Talent Manager at Basalt Technology. Today we're going to be talking about a topic that's very close to our hearts and a topic that we believe should be in the spotlight, and that is how do we empower women in technology. As we approach Women's Day in August, we have three powerful women that are going to be joining us today in this discussion. We have Zandile Keebine, the Chairwoman and founder of GirlCode. Nicole Borges heads up strategic accounts for Africa at one of the largest global fintechs, FIS Global. Samantha Perry is a co-founder of Women in Tech South Africa, an initiative which aims to bridge the gender diversity gap in the tech sector. So Nicole, maybe we can just start off with you. What would you say are some of the current barriers and challenges that women are facing in terms of getting into the tech industry, in terms of jobs, and how do you think those kind of hurdles can be overcome?
I guess I'll focus on the ones that really are in our control. I think, other than being the minority in the technology industry, I think personal mastery and just perceived barriers that females have, our ability to not naturally just network and kind of engage with one another to grow and pull one another through the respective ranks and through our careers are the obvious ones in my mind. I think having the self-belief that you can conquer, and although it is male dominant, we have the ability, we have the skill, and there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to be successful in the industry.
Zandile, anything you can add?
Yes. So I just wanted to add that one of the things that I've noticed is, from the company side in any case, is the job spec. Right, so what you put out there, I think a lot of the language is very masculine. I'll give you examples, talking about Beer Friday, Pizza Friday. As a woman, I don't want to drink beer and pizza. I want salads, so for me, that doesn't seem like an attractive space to be in. So I think companies need to be more cognizant of how they put out their job specs and make sure that it's an inclusive one. And they're not just focusing on what guys enjoy doing, but also, even if you put beer and wine Friday, that makes a lot of difference. And a lot of stats, in the USA show that the language that you use attracts certain people and, can be sort of off-putting to a lot of women when reading it, because automatically you'll think, well, I won't fit into this culture. This is obviously a very male culture space, so I'll go and look for a job somewhere else. So I think, I like Nicole talking about what we can do and what we have control over. And that's just obviously taking up opportunities and, not wanting to have all the requirements before you apply for something. And that's something that I personally suffer from. Even, any, not just jobs, but awards and stuff. I'll be like, but that one thing is missing. I've never done that. So no, I'm not going to apply. So I think, on what we have, in our hands is to control, not being getting over fear and just taking up opportunities. But I think there's a lot that can be done from the corporate side that makes sure that the messaging is that we are an inclusive environment and that we want women to be part of this environment. Yeah.
That's so true. And I think being obviously in the talent space, I think some of us are very much guilty of that. And we forget that, it's not just men in the industry, and there's women in it too. So yeah, very, very nice, very, very valid point. Sam, any thoughts from your side in this regard?
Yeah, don't get me started. I can go on this for days and days. But a couple of things that I've not been repeating for the last however many years, because I tend to find the problems are the same and we repeat them endlessly without anything changing. So I think for a lot of tech companies, because they are so male dominated, they don't realize how testosterone heavy their environments and their communications are. And I know a lot of them feel frustrated that they can't hire women because they have women coming in for job interviews who then go, no, thank you. And I think then becomes a self-perpetuating cycle. So I think that's something that we as women can do, is perhaps to try and educate our male peers more strongly on the things that they're doing that are alienating to women in the environment. Even just, I mean, you know, your average 25-year-old tech who's male, some of the jokes and the humor that circulates. And when you're a 40-plus female like I am, I just raise my eyebrow and go, guys, really? We're not 12. Stop it. But if you're a 25-year-old something woman, that's intimidating and it's not friendly. And even the guys like, oh, we're just kidding. Like, no, dude, that what you're doing is actually, you know, sexual harassment, technically speaking. So there's a lot more awareness of that needs to be created. And I think as older women in the industry, certainly we have space to do that education.
What do you think are some of the steps South African businesses should be doing to create new roles and opportunities for women in technology? And where and how do you think we're currently failing in that area?
I don't think we need to create new roles. I think the demand for tech skills is universal. It's only increasing. Digital transformation is being accelerated at an unholy rate thanks to the COVID-19 pandemic. And the need for tech skills is only going to be accelerated. I've been talking about the technology skills shortage since I started covering tech as a journalist in 1998. Not old. So it's a perpetual problem. There's no need for new roles. We need to fill the ones we have better. We need to showcase ourselves as a sector better. I mean, I routinely get very annoyed with the IT publishers because if you go on the front page of any of their publications, websites, it's all white guys in bad suits. If you go into the magazines, if you look at the conference lineups, I'm like, wow, guys, you know, tech conference I spoke at last year, they had 7 women on the bill. 7 out of 40 odd speakers. I'm like, really? This was the best you can do? What are we showing? Women looking to come into the sector are going to see a bunch of middle-aged white guys in bad suits and go, that doesn't look like a space that's got room for me. And I think as a sector, we need to change that perception quite strongly. And then we need to, as a society, really, we need to actually just start integrating tech skills at the bottom and look at our biases and the way we teach our girl children about what's appropriate for them career-wise and what isn't.
Yeah, I just want to add on that. If you as a leader are talking about wanting more diverse and inclusive company, but then when we look at your board and we look at your executive, and it's all the same, then for me, I feel like there is no real intention of actually excluding women. So we really need to hold them accountable. I think that's what we can do on our side when we see people every single year, the same narrative, but you go into the companies and you're like, but between last year and this year, well, what have you actually done? Nothing. It's still exactly the same people that are running the company. So we need to actually hold people accountable. And I've seen it happening now on social media, which is great, where a conference is happening, it's a manel happening, and you know, women will stand up and say, but even other men allies will say, we're the woman. And if you see it, I think as business leaders, when you see that, oh, but I'm the only woman here, it's nothing to celebrate. You actually have to say to the people that there's no ways I can be 1 woman or 7 women among 40 speakers. If you guys don't actively do something to make sure that there's parity, then I'm pulling out. And I think, you know, being strong in our convictions and not just talking about it is how we get moving past talking about the same thing over and over and over again.
I guess just to add to Zandile and to Sam's comments, I couldn't agree more. I think I've come from and been exposed to 2 very different environments, yet both were focused on supporting and engaging and growing females in technology, which has been incredible. But I think what I haven't seen, and I guess my appeal is to all women and girls and ladies out there, is supporting each other. I think I've often found that males are coaching or mentoring me, you know, just ensuring that there is the next step for me in my career. And I'm super passionate about giving back and growing female talent and talent just in general. But really breaking those barriers and getting women supporting other women and taking them and you know, guiding them through their career and showing them the art of the possible. I think corporates can do a lot more around, corporates and leaders, around providing role models for, you know, the next generation to aspire to be like. That would be incredible.
I completely agree. And Nicole, obviously, while you're on that, what do you think are some of the existing programs and opportunities available that enable women to code and develop their skills? Obviously, we know if there's GirlCode, you know, what are some of the others that you are aware of and know of, and how accessible are these programs to women, especially obviously like in the rural areas as well?
Lerato, I think there's a lot of programs that are underway, and I think given the way we're able to connect so easily nowadays, there's many, incredible channels to get the skill, to gain the skill, and even more and more role models. So I think that, the opportunities are endless. It's about believing in yourself that you can do it and you can take that next step. I think there's a myriad of even just graduate programs across nearly all of the financial services that I've been exposed to in large corporates, and they definitely are targeting females and wanting to see us succeed. So I definitely think the opportunities are out there. Again, it's about poking or prodding your friend next to you and saying, you can do it, apply, go for it, and driving your own success in your career. It's not something that's just going to be done for you. And we need to take responsibility and support those around us in doing so.
Yeah, I actually want to touch on something Nicole said around mentorship. More and more as I engage with people that obviously have been in the industry longer than me, I've actually seen that a lot of women and men want to mentor. And I think maybe for me, the one thing that's kind of lacking in South Africa is sort of a more structured mentorship program, if you may, where someone can say, oh, okay, here's people that are putting up their hands, and I want to be mentored, I want to be part of it. And I think that could go a long way, because I've seen it. There's so many people raising up their hand and saying, I actually want to be a mentor. I don't know where to go about finding a mentee. And I think, mentor, mentee, it's a relationship, like any relationship. So you can't just have anyone as a mentor. Just like you can't just date anyone, you actually need to make sure that your interests align and what you want out of life aligns, and that your mentor is someone that, is in a space that you want to be in. So finding a platform that can actually do that matching up, and actually, like a matchmaking platform for mentor-mentees, I think that would be really fantastic. But of course, I do think that there's a lot of programs out there. Maybe the issue is also just not being aware of them, and just them not being visible enough for everybody to know that this is where the opportunities are. But there's a lot of people that are making sure that we can see the women that are in the industry. We can, see who's doing what. And I know I obviously read a lot of Sam's blogs on the different women in tech, and that information like that is definitely needed, and it needs to be more accessible, and more people just need to know about it. I honestly don't think it's an issue where there's lack of opportunities. I think it's more of an issue of just not being aware of the opportunity. So how do we then make sure that, a girl growing up somewhere in a village with no internet currently, no computer, how do we get to that goal? I think that's a challenge that we currently are facing. But definitely, I think there's a lot of efforts to try and bridge and create that gender parity. We definitely don't want to wait 108 years, as predicted by the UN. I'll be long gone by then. I want to be here, when we reach gender parity. So yeah, I think by working together and promoting each other and actively saying, oh, I know Sam does this, or I know Nicole does that, so that, it reaches to more people, I think that's a step in the right direction. Yeah.
Sam, do you want to add your thoughts to that?
So I work with the UN Office for, this is a long one, brace yourselves, the UN Office for South-South Cooperation Women in Tech Program Secretariat. They are on a mission to get access to internet and computers and tech skills to pretty much every single woman across the African continent. There are massive opportunities there to plug into the grant funding that is available across all the different regions, ECOWAS and the regional economic clusters. But trying to pull into and feed into that can often be quite complicated, and that's where I agree what you were saying. It needs to be more visible and it needs to be more accessible. And I think there's a lack of a coordinating role, even in country. I mean, if you look at, we've got Women in Tech, we've got Women in Tech Africa, and then there's a UK-based organization that does a Women in Tech conference, which is not affiliated to me or Women in Tech Africa. It's this disparate thing, and I think we're now getting to a stage where we need to actually start at least coordinating, if not consolidating, some of our efforts.
And Zandile, with businesses and education providers moving online through this whole pandemic, what do you think are the opportunities that are out there for women, in the tech industry or wanting to enter the tech industry, and like how can they harness these opportunities, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think obviously with the pandemic, we've seen like so many gaps in like business in the education sector, and those gaps are actually opportunities, right? This is now where, as women who have all these resources, this is the time to start creating innovative solutions. There's so many like grants and hackathons and prize money that's out there for people to create really innovative solutions that talk to people that are not connected, people that are in rural areas. And I think this is a time for us to actually excel. This is where like we are uniquely positioned because we've experienced some of these hardships. Like now suddenly I have to be like, a teacher to my son. I'm like, I don't know how to do that. And I'm constantly like looking online, and he's only one, but I'm like, how do you teach a 1-year-old? How do you so as you come up with problems, this is actually the right time to think, okay, what is the solution I'm looking for? And if I can't find it out there, how do I then create it? So I think instead of like looking at all the challenges and the problems, we need to like flip that and be like, okay, this is the challenge I'm experiencing. So I would know the type of solution that I need, right? So then how do I start creating it as a digital solution? And one example, so another idea is where my niece, she's in school, but obviously now had to be at home, and she doesn't have a laptop. They don't have a laptop at her house. They don't have internet, so have to buy data. And I thought, well, let me start sending her stuff on WhatsApp. WhatsApp is way more cheaper than actually going to Google and trying to research. And that's kind of the things that can be created, like creating a WhatsApp bot that allows, kids everywhere in rural areas to actually access proper material, do quizzes. There's so much that WhatsApp can do than just chatting. And I think, firstly, upskilling yourself to know what the technologies are and how you can utilize them, and then actually going out there and building those solutions. I think that's a real opportunity here that's been presented by the pandemic.
Sam, Nicole, your thoughts?
I'll touch on kind of the interpersonal skills and what I think we really can leverage in this pandemic. I think the real positive that we can get from it is it's required everybody to have a more humanness as such, and I think it's natural and inherent in our skills to have empathy, and I think we've got the opportunity to tap into those skills and use it on a day-to-day basis. I think we can easily allow to be, a little bit more vulnerable, and that's something that's not necessarily associated with masculine figures. So I think there's a significant kind of toolbox of skills that just come to us naturally that us as females can tap into and use during what is a very difficult time. I think we've seen certainly productivity from our teams accelerate significantly. However, mental well-being is something that's becoming really, really challenging in the workplace. And how do we manage that? And I think we've got great skills to manage that and to support our teams and other females through this. And I think it's just an awesome time for us to use this.
Very interesting take on that as well. So my last question to you ladies is, what are some of the trends or opportunities in the global technology space from a business perspective that aspiring women and coders, what are they that they should be watching out for? So what are some of the trends that are coming out that you think women in the tech space should be looking out for? And are there any areas where women can play like a unique leading role in those spaces?
Sure. So I think obviously like if in the tech space is like data science, AI, machine learning, all these cool, blockchain buzzwords. But I think there's a real opportunity there for women to position themselves, right? Because if we don't, there's severe consequences. I'll take AI, for example, where we've seen like how AI can go wrong when you don't have a diverse enough group working on those algorithms. And an example is a tech company, which I won't mention because they're a partner, but they built a recruitment software that obviously, because of the historical data they used to plug into it, would reject women more often than it rejected men. So they ended up not having women being, going to the interview stage. And when they looked at it, they're like, that's because the data that's fed, there's this, concept of an AI, or in general, like garbage in, garbage out. So if historical data is basically white men being hired in the company, of course, looking forward, the algorithm will look at your CV and be like, white, female, nope. Black, female, no. So, that's the dangers of not having like a diverse team looking at it and saying, wait a minute, guys, like, the data we're putting in here is not diverse enough for the algorithm to learn. So the dangers in that, I guess, is obviously having AI that's racist and sexist and all of that stuff. And that's like an important thing to make sure that women are part of this, and diverse women, diversity in general. That when you're building technology that's going to fundamentally change all our lives, it can't be based on one group of people's perspective or reality, because they don't know what they don't know, right? And if you don't have someone different from you to say, no, but we're looking at the same thing, but from my side this is how it looks, then I'd really be scared to see what kind of world that would result in. So I think as much as there's so many opportunities there, women also need to not be afraid of it. Like, when you're talking about AI and machine learning, it sounds so intimidating. And the weird thing is that, those terms or those like fields are not inherently masculine. There's nothing masculine about a certain term or technology, but the narrative, again, is what's making it seem like it's a male thing. And I think we need to, again, the people that write these articles and write like, the job specs need to be really cognizant of the language that's being used, so that it's all inclusive and makes sure that women feel like, okay, this is a space where I'm needed. This is a space that I can excel in, and I want to contribute towards, because like I said, it will literally touch every part of our lives. So I think that's some of the technologies and emerging technologies that one can get into as a female.
What are some of the challenges that you ladies have faced, obviously being in the industry? Nicole, I know you started off at Standard Bank on the grad program and kind of worked your way up to the ranks. What were some of the experiences that you experienced, in the space?
I guess, Lerato, some of the challenges were, obvious ones, in that I didn't initially kind of have a role model that I could aspire to be like. There were no real female leaders in technology at the time. But I guess my challenge actually started long before that. In university, my lecturer constantly told me that, it's a male industry and I'm never going to be successful in technology, so why am I doing it? Fortunately, I have the kind of personality when someone tells me I can't do something, that's when it really pushes me to do it. So I'm actually really grateful that happened. So I guess, aspiring and mentorship and leaders from a female perspective was something that wasn't there. However, I must say that I think there were many males around me that were supporting me and providing me that guidance and that leadership. I think one key factor was that I didn't think that I was able to have a career as well as, be a mother if I wanted to be a mother someday, or even focus on my family. And I guess something that's probably been magnified by the pandemic is that we absolutely can. I think more now than ever, we can play multiple roles, and work and life can work really well together, and we can balance them out, given the way or the new norm in which we will be operating going forward. I guess obviously there's always those kind of inappropriate comments or remarks. I grew up in a home with a brother and his friends, so I was accustomed to it. But the challenge was, how do I manage that, and how do I call someone out respectfully without, potentially ruining my career? And I think I had to learn that earlier on, is that it's, you need to set your barriers or your boundaries, and you need to define those and make it known. And I think that was probably one that was really challenging for me, and having to have those tough, honest conversations, and not knowing where it was going to go. I think you're often afraid to call things out like that because you don't know how it's going to go. You don't know who's going to support you, and is it because you're female that's happening, and you kind of brought it upon yourself. So I think that was probably the biggest challenge. But I must say, I feel very blessed that I had a really good support structure around me throughout my career, and most of those were male mentors and coaches. So I think credit to them for stepping in and supporting us females through our careers.
I'm a bit of a not a wallflower personality, as I'm sure you can tell. And I started as a young, attractive female journalist in the tech sector a long time ago now. And a couple of the particularly older gentlemen in the industry thought it would be fun to, if I was interviewing them, answer my questions and give me all sorts of information which they just assumed that I A, wouldn't understand, and B, wouldn't be able to write down accurately, so that they could kind of say more than they would necessarily have to somebody else because they were, being patronizing. They did learn quickly enough, however, that I take notes really, really fast, and that I have a good memory, and that the worst thing a journalist can do to you is to quote you accurately and completely. And after that, they were a lot more polite. But so that was pretty much a factor of my early career, or else walking into functions, particularly with the rougher parts of the IT industry, and you get introduced to somebody and the first thing he does is look at you and go, "Oh, nice tits." I'm like, "Really? Come here so I can headbutt you. Do you have a nice day now?" So that was a bit of a challenge. I think with a lot of men in the sector, they don't actually realize they're doing it. They're just repeating behaviors that are ingrained and that have been learned. One of my bosses at a tech company I worked at, I did something for him the one day and he was like, "Thanks, Sam, you're a good girl." I'm like, "Do you have any idea how patronizing and sexist that is?" I mean, I must have been all of 25 or 26, mind you. And he kind of looked at me and he went, "Oh, actually, you're right. Sorry, I didn't realize that." I'm like, there we go. So sometimes you just actually have to speak up and realize that as much as it is tough, and there's a lot of talk now about emotional labor and why women or people of color must be doing all the emotional labor around racism and sexism stuff. But sometimes I think it's just a case of realizing that the person you're engaging with may not necessarily be aware of what they're doing or why it is particularly offensive, and just to actually speak out, however politely. I'm not the world's most subtle person by any stretch of the imagination. I'm quite sure it has cost me in my career over the years, but that's me. I'm outspoken, and I still have a reputation in the sector for not taking anybody's crap. And that's, that it works to an extent. And it also, because the way I do these sorts of things, which is less subtle and diplomatic, but because it's quite public, it often gives other people the courage to speak out in their own particular circumstances and to actually take on things that they wouldn't, because they look at it and go, "Well, hey, Sam did it, so I can do it." And that, again, is a lesson for all of us to kind of stand up for whatever the challenges we're having are, not just for ourselves, but for future generations. People often ask me if I think women in tech really is going to change the gender base in the South African tech sector in the short term. And I'm like, actually, as far as I'm aware, we've got less women in the sector now than we did when I started. But I'm not fighting this fight for me. I'm fighting this fight for every single female in future generations that will be joining the sector or want to join the sector or look to join the sector. And if we don't fight it now, it's never going to happen. And we're going to have AIs that are racist, or sexist, and Google, in fact, is amazingly disarming in many ways with these sorts of things. And they've got a great video about designing the Pixel phone and the camera, and how the design team and the models they used were all white. So they ended up with a camera that didn't show up black or colored faces particularly well, which was kind of awkward. And they were like, that is something we need to fix. So then they did, and they redesigned and re-engineered absolutely everything to make sure that their cameras recognize as many different diverse types of people as possible. And I think, there's a lesson there. Companies and people need to look at it and go, well, just because I've cocked it up in the past doesn't mean that I don't have time now to stop and go, you know what, let's try and do this differently. Let's just go, what's done is done. I can't go back and be a better person, but I can be a better person or company or whatever from today. And there's a lot of room, especially now with all the upheaval, for us to do that.
Yeah, I think on my side, I obviously haven't been in the space for a long time. It's like 6 years. But when I started working, because on the one hand, I felt really blessed. Like my boss, even though he was a white male, he was very conscious to what's happening, and you could see it in his own company that there weren't women. But on the other hand, I think like what Sam said, he would say things that was very offensive. And he wouldn't say it because, he's a mean person or whatever. And I can tell because he's my mentor until today. But I think the important thing is calling it out. Instead of like going and crying about it and, the environment is not a, space I want to be in, I would say, but this is not, what you're saying is not right. Don't say that. Don't say it to me. Don't say it to any other female. And I think he actually got that, oh, okay, sorry, I was just joking. And that's kind of like the societal thing where, males are so used to like, oh, you look pretty, oh, nice ass. And, like to them, it's engraved that it's okay, I'm complimenting you. Why are you taking it seriously? But the more we call it out and say, nope, that's not, I don't want you to say that. Don't compliment me like that. Tell me about my work and stuff like that. So I think as women, we need to stand up for ourselves more. I think it's that simple. We need to stop taking it. And I think when we do that, then the males who might or might not be aware of how they're behaving might start changing. But also, there's that, accountability on our side to actually call somebody out and say, no, this is completely wrong. So I also, I'm not I do think I'm a shy person, but I think at the same time, I don't just allow things to happen to me. So I will say it, even though I'm scared, I'm like, oh, don't fire me for saying it. But that I strongly believe that you have to stand up what you believe for. You have to stand up what's right. And, the world is basically saying to young girls that you can't do this, you can't do that. And I've always been like, I want to be the person that actually shows them that you can. I don't want to just talk about it. I want to show you that yes, you can do it. So that's kind of been my journey. And I've been blessed also to have a female mentor who is like at the top of her game, and she's amazing and she advocates for more women. And what that has done for me has also made me want to advocate more for women, and not just advocate, but actually like be their sponsors and make sure that when they are not in rooms that I'm in and I feel like they should be, just speak up and say, hey, next time, how about you invite this person and that person to the webinar, because I already have the spotlight. So I think as women, sort of letting go of being proud of being the only woman in the room and be proud of actually saying, I brought these other two women with me. I think that's how we really start, creating real change. Yeah.
To add on to Zandile's point, which I think it's awesome, is that speaking out. And I think one of the key challenges we do face is adjusting and trying to mirror the masculine figures or the males that we see as we navigate our careers. And I think, to be honest, that's something that's been a real challenge for me. I think you walk into a room or you walk into a meeting and you need to sell an idea or a concept, and your immediate thing is to revert to the male person that potentially presented a similar kind of topic. So I think the real challenge for us as females is remaining authentic and not trying to mirror our male colleagues. And just, it's okay if you are called out as emotional or expressive because you're different. Rather, we should celebrate that in one another as opposed to adjusting who we are.
I think that leads to kind of my final question, was what is the one piece of advice that you would give to, women who are either in the industry or wanting to enter the industry, maybe even women who are in the industry and they feel like their passion is dying out or dying because of, all the challenges and stuff that they're facing. What would that one piece of advice be?
Happy to start. Yes, following from our earlier point is really just be authentic, be bold, ask questions, and always arrive. Stick to your values. And I think when you're going through very challenging times in your career or even decision points, it's those values and that authenticity that's going to be your lifeboat to success.
I think for me, it's about being brave. A lot of times I've, talked myself out of opportunities just because I was scared. I was scared of a no, I was scared of rejection. We need to be more brave. I think, and the phrase that I like, which is used a lot on social media, is shoot your shot. Basically like just send a message to Nicole and say, hey Nicole, can I have coffee? I want ABC, I'd like to learn from you. Even if she says, no, I'm sorry, I'm busy, it's fine, but you kind of, put yourself out there. And the more you do it, the easier it becomes, and you start taking on, even bolder steps, and you start like actually putting yourself out there. And I think as women, that's what we need to do. We need to actively put ourselves out there and just be brave about it. I know from obviously personally, it's really scary. There's things that even till today, I want to do it, but I'm like, maybe not now. I'll try again next year. So I think one thing I want to say to young girls is, just be brave. Just get over that fear. The worst that can happen is a no and a rejection, and you move on to the next opportunity.
So if I had any advice for girls looking at entering the sector, I'd say that IT is nowhere near as boring as it appears on the surface. And don't let anybody put you off, or the fact that the IT sector is terrible at marketing itself. If you're into maths and science, there's massive scope for growth, particularly in areas like AI and ML and robotics and data science and all sorts of interesting places. To women who are already in the sector, I say don't let the bastards get you down. And look after yourself first, because as women we're often guilty of being everything to everybody, and we don't take enough time to step back and go, hold on, am I on the verge of a nervous breakdown here? And if I am, I'm going to go to bed for the weekend, pull the duvet over my head and tell everybody else to go away and leave me alone. And we need to do that for ourselves sometimes. So I think it's a lesson all of us need to learn and keep learning, is you can't pour from an empty cup. So look after you first. You don't owe anybody anything except yourself, and you have to answer to yourself first. So make sure that the answer is the right one.
Perfect. Lovely. Thank you so much, ladies. That wraps up all the questions that we had. I think very insightful. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the session, and happy Women's Day.